All right. What's up, dude? How are you,
How are you,
buddy?
man? Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So obviously, Kyle, we did a big intro for you and kind of introduced you a little bit. But you and I were just talking off air right now. So for our listeners out there, you're going to be catching this probably in the next 2 weeks. So the
Did I lose you?
beginning of March. No, I think you're there. Can you hear me?
I lost you for a bit.
All right, hold on. Let me see. All right, I'll tell my guy to start it at another time. Hold on, real quick. All right. Are you off Wi-Fi? All of yours, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm off of it.
Okay. All right. Mine should be good.
Cool. Try it again.
All right. Let me check. We'll get at the minute mark. All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another Meta Purpose podcast. I obviously did a big intro for our guy over here, so I'll let him intro himself. But so Kyle, you and I were just talking off air right now about March Madness. For our listeners out there, when this gets launched, it'll be like first week in April that it gets launched. So right now, as we're doing this, March Madness is happening, and both you and I, Kyle, were just talking about how we have no idea what's going on, and I don't know how I feel about it. What about you?
Oh man, I used to be able to tell you who was going to be like the first and the 16th ranked teams, who's playing in all the brackets, who I thought would win every division, who would go to the Final Four. I had a lot invested in it, but I couldn't even tell you who's in it or who's ranked anywhere. So, I'm partially bothered by that. Partially, I feel good about it because I know that my time is being spent like doing actual productive stuff. Not that watching March Madness isn't good. It's great, but at least I don't know who's playing because I'm doing stuff that's also good. So, I got mixed feelings, Des.
Dude, I'm the same way. Yeah, I filled out a bracket because my siblings made me. I chose Michigan to win, not because I know anything about their team, but I do know that their head coach is Juwan Howard, who I go back to like when I played
Fab Five.
basketball. I was like, yeah, Fab Five, dude. So it's like that's why I chose him. But other than that, man, I know nothing about what's going on, and I also don't know how to feel about it too. But I'm glad you and I can share the misery that is like just being busy fathers.
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up in the Midwest. I live in Idaho now, but I grew up in Indiana, so like IU
Oh,
through and through.
dang.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
It was like, everybody has a basketball goal in their backyard, and everybody at least knows the history of Bob Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers. And so, growing up as a kid, you'd always root for them. 95% of the time, they weren't even in it. So, still, it's been fun to watch college basketball progress, and I missed it last year a lot. So we'll see if I can catch a
Yeah.
game or two this year.
All right. So Kyle, I didn't know that. I got to ask you the burning question, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot, saying that you're from the Midwest and Indiana. Um, Thoughts on Bob Knight?
Oh man, first words that pop in my mind is mixed bag. So like
Yeah.
well, first of all, he's a mixed bag on the mental stability level,
Oh yeah.
uh but aside from that, man, I mean, I feel like a lot of his outburst was because he was as passionate as he was. So from that
Yeah.
stance, I love that. I think if you're gonna do something, you should do it and care about it. And he did, and obviously he coached his players well, and so definitely probably should have given thought to some of his actions before he did them. But I think the heart behind the action is probably the part that I do admire. So definitely mixed emotions, but he's one of ours, so we can't deny him.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny that you say that because, like, obviously living in Arizona, like University of Arizona Wildcats, Lute Olson, that's just like every single year because our football program is always trash. But we try to put hope in our basketball program. And so this year is the year that we took our like self-proclaimed hit because we allegedly have been paying players, which I don't know about you, but it's a freaking business. Everyone's paying everyone. So this is the year that we did. But when I think about Bob Knight, man, like at first I'm like, yeah, you are an asshole. Like there's no other way to put it. But then just like you're saying, I mean, I'm sure you watched the Jordan documentary, like champion like competitors are. Like
Hmm.
that's just like the way to put it, man. It's just it's
Hmm.
hard to paint a different picture when you're in the business of winning. So yeah,
Well,
I can see where you're coming from.
but even in the Jordan documentary, right? Like they talked a lot about how they'd had such a successful history. I think it was like 5 championships, which in most cases you would look at that and say, well, geez, we've got a great thing going here. Let's keep it up. But from a business standpoint, the leadership saw this isn't going to last forever. We need to make changes while we can. So they sort of set them up for the last dance, right? And then of course
Yeah,
they won the last one. But even then, there's good and bad, and to your point about that, everything being in business, even with college basketball, everybody's always looking to the next step. So even when things seem like you wouldn't make a change, they throw that in there. So yeah,
yeah.
definitely a unique dynamic. That was a good documentary too.
Oh, I love that. I think I've watched it a third time. So I don't know about you, and obviously Kyle, like we did a little bit of an intro before this, and I'll let you introduce yourself to our listeners. But from a business perspective, I find like getting into the mindset of a champion is really helpful for me. So this is why like I've watched the Jordan documentary 3 times almost already. Because there's something about someone stepping into their craft that I just really appreciate because I, like you, in a lot of ways, have just really threw myself into not knowing what to do, but to learn how to do it. And so, like, I just have a
Yeah.
lot of respect, even just working with elite level athletes too. Of like, this is what you've dedicated your life to, and to be able to see yourself win in some of these arenas is just really cool to see. So, yeah, man, I love that documentary.
Yeah, I think, and to your point too, and we talk about, we talk a lot about this in the program that I, run with our athletes and stuff. It's, there's always this perception that there are certain groups of people that have sort of this natural or this genetic or this intrinsic drive to just do the stuff that 99% of the population hates. And I think you're in this boat too, but we both have the chance to work with a lot of people and even athletes that seem like they're in that 1% or less. And the thing that I've
Yeah,
learned, you tell me if this is true, it's not that those things don't pop up. They just don't let those things become an excuse, right? Like they go
yeah,
do them in spite of the way that they feel. They take the emotion out of it, and it's only driven by logic, right? It does not
hmm,
matter if I feel like doing X, Y, and Z to make progress or to perfect my craft. I'm going to do. It doesn't matter if I feel comfortable in going to do a presentation in front of my class or my school or my colleagues at work or whatever. I'm going to be the first guy to sign up because I need to learn how to get over that hurdle, right? And so, to your
yeah,
point, I think that that levels the playing field for all of us. That you don't have to just have hoped that you were birthed with some sort of genetic gift to be able to get up in
yeah,
front of people and do uncomfortable stuff. It's the elite level people who seem like they've naturally got it, but they don't. They just don't make the excuse. And I think
yeah,
you would probably be able to speak to this, that when you have that attitude, even if it's not perfect, someone that we both follow a lot, imperfect action always beats no action at all. So
yeah,
I love that. I just love that idea. I love your sentiments on that documentary. I love Jordan for the same reasons. But
yeah,
yeah, awesome takeaways.
yeah. No, it's crazy the way that you kind of compare the mind of an athlete compared to just the day to day person. And you're absolutely right. The mindset does become, to a certain extent, bulletproof, where it's like I know that at some point I'm going to see the fruits of this labor, and so like I'm not going to let it, just like you had said, I'm not going to let excuses, or I'm not going to let these stories that I tell myself keep me from a really great opportunity. And so I definitely agree. So Kyle, let me ask you, so for our listeners out there, I've been this has been like, I don't know, when we first started chatting, it was like, I feel like it was 2 years ago. Like, I don't even
It's
know.
wild, man. Yeah.
Because like anytime like in the space, like I see another male dietitian, it's like, oh my god, dude, what's up? Right?
Yeah, and to and
So-
to your credit, like people listen to podcasts and they wonder if the people behind the mic are truly the way that they are. I just want to say that, like, I reached out to you first, just said, what's
yeah,
up, saw another male dietitian, and you were totally welcoming, like, and inviting, like, dude, we, let's sort of support each other. You are the
Yeah.
dude behind. You are really the guy that you present to be. So hopefully some your listeners can take comfort in that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, dude. I appreciate that. So for our listeners out there, Kyle and I connected, like I said, probably like 2 years ago, where it was like, dude, we gotta talk, we gotta jump on a podcast together, we gotta collaborate somehow. And for those that don't know, I think male dietitians in the field, I think represent like less than 10%. So anytime that a dude dietitian sees another, it's like, oh my God, dude, do you want to be friends? Like another guy. Um, so we connected and we had some conversations about him jumping on. And so, dude, I'm so excited to be able to finally do this after such a large amount of time. A lot of it was probably scheduling on me, dude. So 100% our listeners out there, I got a lot of apologies for this guy, but Kyle, welcome to the pod, man. Please introduce yourself, what you do, and we'll get into a little bit more questions, bro.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, no worries, Ed. I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, so I'm just grateful to be here. Yeah, so my name's Kyle Kamp. I'm a dietitian, like I said, born and raised in the Midwest in Indiana. Moved to Idaho. I got transplanted in Idaho because that's where I was placed to do my dietetic internship. I actually had no desire to move here, but if you're familiar with the process, they place you and you either go or you better start figuring out another career option for yourself.
Yeah.
So the mindset was is I would come out here, I would do what I needed to do to get my credentials. I'd go back to Indiana, find a job, live my life. But I came out here to Idaho, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the just geography, the environment, the people, the type of things that I enjoy doing for recreation. Like it's just there's an abundance of them, plus some out here, and so when I got out here to do my internship, I met a few friends and started to take part in a lot of what Idaho offers for outdoor recreation. I just fell in love with it. So here I am, geez, I guess I don't know, a little bit less than 10 years later, still living here. And I suppose part of this introduction is what I do. So I do work part time as a dietitian. It's a full time job, but it's half of my life, I guess I should say,
Yeah.
a hospital here in Boise doing outpatient nutrition. I've done some clinical nutrition too, but the way Desi and I connected was I also own a personal nutrition business called Valley to Peak Nutrition, which is the focus is on either helping people prepare for or to be able to be in the outdoors and just nutrition around that. So, anything from ultra marathons in the mountains or skiing in the mountains or mountaineering or making big summit climbs like you would see guys do on Netflix documentaries or a lot of multi-day backpack trips or multi-day hunts where guys are hunting in the mountains of Alaska for sheep. Just a lot of really, really cool things that these folks that I work with are doing. It's amazing opportunity to be able to work with them and just to, I do some of that, but to be able to live some of the bigger trips vicariously through them, it's awesome. I love it.
Dude, it's so funny. So for our listeners out there, like the thing that really connected me to Kyle, aside from him just being a really solid person, he shares a lot of his journey with a lot of his clients who, I don't know, would you consider them like extreme sports men and women? Like I would. Like,
Yeah.
would you consider them that?
I mean, there's definitely some. I would say the feats that they do certainly are on the more extreme side compared to what a lot of people do, right? Like, so there is certainly no need to shun somebody who loves to do 5Ks. That's a 3 mile run. That's
Yeah.
still is a challenge for some people in and of themselves. But whenever you compare that to guys doing 50 and 100K runs in the mountains over multiple days, with fueling stations and adding in all of those things, it's more on the extreme side of things. And some of the peaks that guys go to. I've had people climb Kilimanjaro and big mountains and other continents and stuff too. And yeah, it's just we talked earlier about just the sort of the drive and the desire and trying to aim for big goals. So that's something that motivates me is talking to these people who have just crazy goals. I mean, it's stuff that I probably would never think of myself, but I get the opportunity to talk to them, and that type of stuff motivates me. It's like, wow, man, that's awesome. You're taking advantage of that opportunity. So it encourages me to try to challenge myself to do more difficult things.
Dude, it's Kyle, it's cool to So for our listeners out there, this will obviously go up on YouTube, and if I'm being honest, probably my internet. So there's a little bit of a lag, so no worries about that. But as Kyle's sharing right here, like Kyle, your face is lighting up, and that's when like when you talk to someone that they're in their right space is when they start talking about what they do and they start lighting up. So like as you're sharing, dude, you started lighting up on that. And I can imagine that as you help these people, that it's super inspirational to you to do hard things. Because I mean, let's tap into the mindset of someone who climbs these like magnificent feats. I mean, what are you finding with those people from a mindset perspective?
It's similar to what we talked about, right? It's not that they expect to not run into any issues. In fact, they expect to, right? So it's training the mind to know how to deal with those situations when you get into them, and especially whenever you're, several miles deep, far from any cell phone service, up on a peak where you don't just have the option to stop and call someone, to come pick you up. So it's training yourself on how to deal with those situations whenever they come up, rather than just hoping that they don't, and hoping everything goes well. And I think one way that I've seen people repeatedly do that is they intentionally put themselves in hard situations, in training and in controlled environments where they can, if something does happen, bail out. But they just become so used to and so immune to exposing themselves to these challenging situations that whenever it really counts, it's not like they're all of a sudden shocked, or there's just this ton of anxiety that comes up because they're now having to deal with a problem that they didn't think they'd have to face. They know how to deal with them because they intentionally put themselves there all training season.
Yeah, yeah. I talk to my clients a lot about this too, because while I've never had any crazy like health defects. I've been incredibly privileged to grow up in a Latino family where there was a big emphasis on food, love, and culture. I've never been in these. I've never been in a body where it's like, hey, I need to make these changes. I've been in a mind that needs to be that, and so I can really resonate with that, and I can really empathize with others who are wanting to change their life. But you said something in there that I thought was really important. It's something that I tell my clients all the time is if you constantly live your life in a way where you're putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, you're able to see what you're truly made of. And I think what you just talked about there, Kyle, is like putting themselves in uncomfortable situations so that when the time comes that situation might present itself, that they're prepared. And so I feel like to our listeners out there is like, I'm not asking you to, without the skills, to go on top of a mountain and just go do your thing. If you do that, we'll make sure we hit up Kyle for something like that. But I do want to make sure our listeners understand like the role of discomfort and the role of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to see what you are truly made of. And so, Kyle, can you, with these types of like athletes or these types of people that you've worked with, what are some of the nutritional things that need to make sure are part of their arsenal, if you will?
Yeah, so that's good. I'm going to come back to that, but I want to sort of add to what you said there, echo what you said. Part of, whenever we talk about intentionally putting yourself in challenging situations, we get these ideas of, well, I need to, come to the West and hike these big mountains to put myself in that. And that's not it at all. For some of these guys, that is simply, if you've committed to doing 6 sets of sprints, you're not shorting out at 5. Even if you're gassed at 5, you're doing the sixth, whether you feel like it or
Yeah.
not, right? Like, we're not talking about stuff that just is, tons of money or seemingly endless. If you're supposed to be doing some sort of an activity, but you're walking between reps or between sets and you should be jogging, then you jog, right? It's not letting yourself have water immediately when you feel the trigger, but waiting. Like it's prolonging comfort for the development of that mental discipline. So yeah, I don't want
Yeah.
guys to think, or guys or women to feel like they've got to go, invest a week-long vacation and spend it at 10,000 feet and on the top of some peak to develop mental discipline. That's not the case at all. Nutritionally speaking, man, it's the same as you would think of for a lot of athletes, right? Emphasis on carbohydrates. So like a lot of people, they'll come and they'll want to talk about, trying to take as much fat as possible and having them realize that, yeah, you need some of that on that, but the reality is that the type of activity you're doing is high intensity. And so the more intense the exercise, the more reliant the body is on carbohydrate as a substrate. So you have to
Hmm.
have something in there. You got to talk about timing, right? You can't just eat breakfast and then hope you're going to eat dinner and nothing in between and it work well for you. It won't.
Yeah.
So you've got to talk about timing as well. And then we spend time on protein, right? So protein is the king of the nutrition world in everyone's mind, but you have to have long conversations with these guys who train a lot that protein's not an energy source. The body is not designed to use protein as a substrate to propel
No.
you up a mountain or even to participate in a basketball game. It's designed to repair
Hmm.
and heal, recover, and grow the muscle. So you don't need a ton of protein on these excursions. There's a gigantic difference between taking calories and taking the right kind of calories on these kind of
Yeah.
events. So we spend a lot of time walking through those things, what all of that means, what that looks like from a logistics perspective. So now you've got this set of numbers that you should be aiming for, the calories and the different macronutrients, the carbs, proteins, and fats. How do you fill those in with actual food? What's that look like? Right. So there's a lot of strategic planning behind it. There's a lot of education. I mean, I really want people to know why the numbers are what they are, not just here's my numbers. Don't worry about why. Just go eat it. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the quote unquote excursion trip preparation. And then we've got, of course, the month to month one-on-one coaching when guys feel like, maybe they've been out of it for 3 or 4 years and they're not even in what they feel like is good enough shape to go to the mountains. How can we over a period of months work on progressively getting you to where this is that you need to be so you can go do this
Mhm.
trip?
Yeah. Kyle, I wonder if you can expand a bit on like obviously, because I just did a live in our Facebook group right now about like how to build your own nutrition program. And for me, like the biggest aspect is like get clear on the type of goal that you need because some of you might be searching for maintenance, more sports nutrition, more performance nutrition, others fat loss, others looking to gain lean muscle. And so like I kind of like walked them through that and had talked about like in reference to the goal, like that's where your macronutrient distribution is going to play a role.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm wondering if for you as like you're serving this different population, like way different than what I'm used to with a lot of my people. Um, what are you finding? Like, what are the biggest things that those types of people need to unlearn? Because this, like as dietitians, like we spend probably the first 30 days on setting up things that help them be successful, but also helping them to unlearn some things that they've either been doing or have been
Hmm.
taught.
Well, I think it's going back to what we said a second ago. Like there's one of the great things about living in 2021 is we have an abundance of information
Mhm.
literally within seconds from us at any point in time, whether it's on our phone or on a computer. The problem with living in 2021 is we've got an abundance of information available to us at any second, whether it's on a
Yeah.
phone or a computer, right? So you start to dive in this and everyone is an expert. The problem is that everyone's not an expert. So, you have to whatever the current fad is, which has changed over the years, and lately it's sort of been the high fat, low carb. If you're not training, if you're trying to lose weight and you feel like that approach allows you to be consistent and adherent to some kind of a program, there is
Hmm.
nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah.
But if you tell me you're training to go to a mountain and you've got no gas halfway through your workout, not to mention you can't work out the rest of the week because you're just exhausted, the reality is we've got to unlearn that fat is fuel. Fat can work,
It
but
can work. Yes.
there's a huge difference between what's optimal and what's practical. I'm not really interested, and you didn't, you didn't ask for help because you just wanted something that worked. You saw it wasn't working, so here's what has to work.
Mhm.
And then they have to decide, do I want to, am I willing to do what it takes to change that? Not in a, I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but I'm not telling you got to go do this or else, right? Not
Mhm.
at all. I'm saying this is what science says you should do and you would be able to achieve the goals you want. Do you want to do that? Like, are you willing to sort of make that change? And if so, let's talk about how to do it. And if not, then we probably can't expect what you've been experiencing to change. So it's
Yeah.
totally up to you, kind of which side you want to lean on, and I'll help you on whichever side you do want to lean on. But it's important for us to know what we should expect, and then try to go that way.
Well, because I think that part is really important because you're right. There's a difference between optimal and practical. I tend to find, just like you had said, the big thing right now is higher fat, lower carb. But it's funny when I talk to people about like what is optimal and what is practical, I'm always asking further questions like, okay, well, what's your overall goal? Because you and I both know as essential like sports dietitians, it's like, hey, like this is what is going to be optimal for your performance. Now, what's important to you? Because I
Hmm.
know working with a lot of baseball guys, especially those that were kind of going through their own individual rehabs, they're like talking about like, hey, like I just want to get cut, I just want to get shredded. And so it was really hard to help them understand, like, while like this is important, it is going to be optimal for you to continue to heal in this way. And it's just one of those things that I think for a lot of our listeners out there, that if you're kind of like thinking to yourself, like, what's best for me, and you're really frustrated, that you're not alone. 100%, you're not alone in the
Hmm.
frustration because I mean, it's the reason why Kyle and myself have businesses and we have jobs,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
think in
100%.
a lot of ways, helping people to understand that. So Kyle, you mentioned that obviously you've been living, you said in Boise, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said you've been in Boise for 10 years. I've never personally been, right? You said you went there because of the internship. The last time you and I had chatted, I really loved because like you and I have a similar, I guess, aura, if you will. It's like, hey, I'm really passionate about this, but I am super passionate about being a father and a husband. So, dude, tell our listeners about your family, man.
Oh yeah, man. I love nutrition, but I love my wife and son even more.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, so my wife and I. So when I moved out here, I met my wife at church, and we went on a date, and man, I no lie, I had spent a number of years just single, like no dating at all. I came to Idaho, I met new friends, and it was like every girl on the planet was looking for a single guy around my age. So I just started going on dates, right? So I met my wife. She and I went on a date. It was 3 weeks later. I was 100% convinced that she was going to be the person that I would marry. And it was only 2 or 3 months later that we started planning the wedding. We got married 8 months after we met. We've been married now.
dang. Whew, all
Yeah,
right.
we got married. We've been married now 7 years. Best. So I'm a very analytical person. I weigh every potential option, every conceivable risk before I go 100% on a decision that seems. I mean, if there's a risk that seems worth taking, I'll take it. But I'm really analytical. I didn't need any analysis on this. Like I knew for sure I was going in and I was confident about it. And so yeah, we got a little boy who will be 2 in April.
Yeah,
And even before I met my wife growing up, like, I knew more than anything on the planet, the one thing I wanted to be was a good husband and a good dad. So,
yeah,
working what is essentially two full-time jobs, as you know, can be absolutely exhausting. It can be very challenging to balance, but I try to always make sure, as much as I'm able to make sure that they are at the very top of that list,
yeah,
and trump everything.
yeah.
Sometimes I do good at that, sometimes I don't, but I certainly try to keep that at the forefront of my mind. And aim for that for sure.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because for me, like it keeps me anchored. It keeps me out of a lot of trouble because before I met my wife, like it was a lot of festivals, working my ass off, doing a lot of traveling, and just like really in a lot of ways, just partying, just having fun. So when I finally met her, because at the time we were both working in eating disorders. So I was a dietitian and she was the therapist, and so her and I oftentimes joke that like you can't not share that type of vulnerability together and not find some sort of connection. Um,
Hmm.
so it's funny that you mentioned that because they both of them are very much my anchors as well. Um, I would love to understand a bit more, Kyle. So you said from the time that you guys met, 8 months later, you guys are married, correct?
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, we
Okay, you
met.
said you've
Go ahead, go ahead.
you said you're All right, so go ahead. No, you were about to tell me you met. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess it would have been about 9 months. We met in late November, ended up getting married in early August. We started planning the wedding in May, so it was really about 5 or 6 months after we met that we started. Well, no, I proposed. I proposed in May. We met in November. I proposed in May. We started planning the wedding in March. So about 3 months after we met, we started planning the wedding. Oh, oh man,
That's
I don't know what
amazing.
I was thinking looking back on it, but it was the best decision I ever made.
Dude, I'm so glad it worked out, but like I'm so interested in, because like I'm a huge value systems person. Like I'm still continually understanding mine, and how they pose decisions for me, and how even in some of the ways in which my wife and I are continually working on us, it's like even like some of the differences in our values, and how we want to pass this on to our little 5 year old. I'm always a student of value systems, and so you said that you were extremely analytical, that you weigh all the options, right? And actually, you do pose as someone like that, so you are very correct in that too. Uh, Kyle, for you, like, what were the values that really attracted you to your wife?
So that's a good question. I would say number one, faith is a big part of our lives. So, we had to have the
Mhm.
same faith value system, which, was belief in God, some sort of an involvement in church, which we both had. So that was a
Mhm.
prerequisite for sure. And she was actually leading the kids ministry at the church that we were at. And so, we ended up sort of, like I said, meeting through that. So I think that one was definitely important. And I think that, like I said, I am analytical, but I think that I was analytical in this. It just didn't take me long to be analytical, right? Like
Yeah.
I had been on all of these dates, and like all of these dates, I was like, I ended up having this conversation with my dad, just thinking like, do you just, when you were dating, do you just settle? Do you just like pick the least worst?
Because I've been dating
and
some stinkers.
Right, and like
Yeah.
you just find the option that's the least worst and go with it. Is that kind of how this is supposed to work? And he was like, no, you just
No.
keep on waiting. Like you'll eventually know. And during those, that time when I met her, like even I was never under the misinterpretation that our lives would be perfect, right? But I
Yeah.
knew that anything that did come up, she was the type of person, she had the character and the type of person that I could work through anything with. And
Yeah.
that to me was a game changer, right? Like, divorce and stuff just isn't even an option or a word at our
Yeah.
house. And so to be able to just sort of work through things with people, and she never had a flag that was that flagged for character, right? Like people get upset about, the toothbrush being out or the toilet paper being flung wrong or pants being in the hallway. Those aren't character flaws. Those are just annoyances, and that's going to be anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
But character flaws are she wasn't a liar. She wasn't, a sneak. She wasn't anything, any of those things. She was always
Mhm.
open to communication. She was always honest. I never, and to this day, I never have to guess what she's thinking. She just tells me, which is great and really
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
um, so like, I knew those things, and I was just very honest. And this is the analysis part. Is like, obviously one of those values was she had to be attractive. My wife's hot, so man, it doesn't get better than this, right? Like man, if anything,
Yeah.
you should probably go all in now rather than waiting until August.
Yeah.
So because of that, like, one thing I can never understand is why there's these 14-year engagements. Like if I knew she was it, why do we need to
Yeah.
wait 25 years engaged before we do it? Like, you're it, let's go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we did.
Dude, it's so funny that you mentioned that too, because like my wife and mother-in-law, both just obviously tremendous people. They joke with me that I like dragged my feet. And it's so funny that when we all talk about it and laugh about it, it becomes a somber moment, because like for us, like we did things, and for our listeners out there, you've probably heard me tell this story, but I'm gonna tell it again. I don't give a crap. We did things ass backwards. So like we had a kid, bought a home, and then we got married, right? All in the span of, let's see, how old was Rory when we got married? All in the span of like 3 years. So when they ask me about it, it's like, it wasn't that I didn't think that you were the one. It was more so like I wasn't sure if I could show up the best version of myself yet. Which I think a lot of people can really resonate with, because I think, as especially from a male perspective, when you step into something that's really important to you, you want to make sure your side of the street is clean, if you will. And for me at the time, like we joke about this and then it goes somber when I'm like, yo, like I did not think that I could be a healthy individual at the time. Like I was working 70 to 80 hours. I was not really present when I got home. Like I was really stressed, trying to do my best to take care of myself, getting a full-time job, trying to run a business, and just like really not happy. And so in a lot of ways, it was more so that like I wasn't ready within me to feel like I was showing up the best version of myself. And so I wonder for you, Kyle, because you mentioned like you're doing two full-time jobs. You're doing your best to try to manage and balance this. Uh, and I kind of want to know which side you're on, because I'll let you know which side I'm on later. But this like balance of family and work-life balance. Others say that it's a myth. Others are for it. So answer me two questions. One, what are some of the things that you do to try to maintain that balance? And two, do you believe in that balance?
So I think so. I'm going to go backwards here. I do believe in that balance, right? And I know that there are a ton of people that will probably send me hate mail about this, but I know there's this whole idea that there is no work-life balance and life is just always work and, life together. I think
Yeah,
that's an inevitable recipe for real burnout at some point, right? So I
100%. Yeah.
think if you don't take time to prolong time even to step away from your work, it's just going to be inevitable that you're going to have to. So I am a believer of those two things, of the separation of. Now, I do think that work could look like, especially when you're owning your own business, being on a call at 7 p.m. or jumping on a podcast, or sometimes you do some stuff on Saturday morning, sometimes you do some stuff on Sundays, whereas it's not just this structured 7 to 4, Monday through Friday, like a lot of other jobs can be. So I do think there's that sort of differentiation, but then that also opens up time during the day where you can hang out with your family that you don't get at a traditional job, right? So from
Yeah.
that end, it kind of is a flow, but there definitely needs to be sort of just, I think, large chunks of time. So a couple
Mhm.
of things. I don't do anything on Saturdays and Sundays at all with work at all. I mean, it's completely devoted from them. My phone's
Props
not
to
with
you, bro.
me. Well, I'm going to come back to that. My phone is not with me. I have very structured, guarded, and clear boundaries. I keep a super detailed calendar. I keep a habit tracker. Like, so,
Nice.
another thing that I do is like to make sure that I still do things for my wife, put attention on her every day. I make sure the living room is put back to normal. I get up super early, so I make sure the living room is put back to normal. I turn the heat on for her in the morning and I boil water for the coffee. I have a question where I ask myself, on a scale of 1 to 5, how intentional was I in conversation with her today? And then
Mhm.
did I ask her? I have a goal of asking her one intentional question a day. So I track that every day. I know that I'm going to report on that. So it's always
Wow.
in my
I love
head.
that.
Right. And that seems sort of like forced, but the reality is I would rather have stuff like that remind me than to not do it. And it's not like I don't want to do it. I just forget because I have other
Yeah.
things in my mind. So when I've got something like that, it helps. So that's one thing
Yeah.
that I do. I get up I get up every morning at 4. So I keep a very structured schedule of, from this time to this time, that's for this, that's for that. And so after I get off in the afternoons, it goes back to weekend mode. I try not to be on my phone. I don't touch Instagram. I don't touch Facebook. I don't touch any of that stuff. It's completely devoted to them. So, the rest of the time I'm sort of in that mix. So I just think, sort of the theme here is very clear, structured boundaries. I don't let myself cross those. I have to be honest with myself. I don't let myself cross them, and I don't let other people impose them on me. Oh, sorry, bro. Can you do it at 7 p.m.? Nope. We
Yeah.
can do it tomorrow at 3, though. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
busy. I We'll have to figure
I'll
something
tell
else
you.
out then, right?
Yeah.
So on Saturdays and Sundays, I don't. so I get up. This is sort of that sacrifice thing. I get up again early, generally at 5. On Saturdays, I review my whole week. On Sundays, I prepare the next week. They're not awake. It's not cutting into time for them. And then once they get up, that stuff goes away, and then it's for them. So I don't
Mhm.
do intentional work when they're awake on the weekends, but so that I don't have to do intentional work on the weekends, I get up earlier. So that way I can be prepared as well as settle my week from the week before. And that has brought so much clarity and peace over every day when I follow that structure, as opposed to just this chaotic open-ended loop of, oh, she wants my attention, the clients want my attention, my
Yeah.
full-time job needs my attention, and you're just all over the place. There's just chaos in your mind, and I've lived there too, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I these structured details have been important for me. And then the last one, so I work out from 4 to 5. From about 5 to 6, I typically have breakfast, have coffee, and sort of settle myself. I do my faith-based stuff, sort of meditation, reading the Bible, prayer, whatever. And then I try to read 10 pages, then I jump into work in the morning. That couple hours in the morning completely dictates whether the rest of this goes well or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing that I definitely do is I try to make sure that that routine happens no matter what, even if it looks imperfect. If I can read 5 rather than 10, I'm happy I did it. Right. But I've seen that has to happen for me to maintain some stability between the two, because even if the business goes crazy and, becomes world renowned or whatever, but I lose them, I've lost, right? So,
Yeah.
number one to me is I've got to constantly figure out how I can make sure that they are at the top and that they don't
Yeah.
suffer because of anything else, whether it's, the side business, the main job, or, I've got some hobbies that sometimes require time, so that they're not missing from that. And yeah, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what I do.
Dude, Kyle, I love it. I love it, man. So for our listeners out there, like I really love that Kyle touched on some keystone habits of his, and he also touched on some non-negotiables. Dude, I really love the daily intentional question. Like I will tell you, and my my wife will call me out at all times of the day. The moments that we take the time to actually engage in intentional like conversation, like for us, it's like we watch a show that we really love and then we'll talk about it, or we might listen to a little snippet of a podcast and then talk about it, or like even we have these like intentional questions that are always at our dinner table. So now our 5-year-old is like, she'll grab a question and she'll like, Daddy, can you read this to me? And so I'll read it to her, and then we'll just have a talk about it. So dude, I love the intentional
Yeah.
uh question each day. And I love even more that like there's a daily intention for you to take a look and kind of, I didn't hear you say that you grade yourself per se, but like you kind of like take some ownership behind, this is what went well yesterday, like what can I do to protect that today. And so
Yeah.
man, I really love that. And I'm also of the school that work and family life balance can happen. Like there's, to me, like they're synonymous with one another, and at the same time they feed off one another. Because I know for me that, especially this last year, it's completely changed. I'm doing a whole lot more parenting that I thought I was ever going to do working from home. And so now it's mostly like, how can I be there for my daughter? And then the other things, like I can try to include her. She can work out with me. We can go on walks together. We can do all those things. So I think in a lot of ways, there's just a lot of compassion needs to be had. But even more so, Kyle, something that really resonated with me with what you just said is taking ownership of your day, man. So I really, really love that.
Yeah. And if you looked at this tracker, there's days where there's holes. Like, I didn't ask the question, but
Yeah. Yeah.
there are more boxes in there that I did, right. And for me, like, I'm not going to sit there and obsess about the holes and not being perfect. I'm going to be glad that there were more days that I did than there were more days that I didn't. And I'm going to let those open boxes be an awareness to me of, like, if I start to see 2 or 3 open boxes next to each other, that's a problem. And
Hmm.
sometimes, like, again, going back to the training thing and doing the mentally challenging stuff, sometimes those questions are simply following up like, hey, did Sarah call you back yesterday? What'd she have to say? Right? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's deeper than that. Like, hey, you seemed whatever frustrated yesterday. Is everything all right? Is there anything I can do around here that would maybe help or whatever? Right? I'm making stuff up, but the
Yeah.
point is that it's the thought. It's not that it needs to be some kind of like overly analytical deep dive into her thoughts on politics, finances, taxes, and religion. It is, it's
Yeah.
it's not that at all. And this stemmed from a conversation we had. There's a book called The Five Love Languages, which basically says that
Yep.
everyone's got
Yep.
a love language that they speak, whether it's gifts or physical touch or whatever. And she condensed it really well for me. She said basically, the way that I know that you care the most is just, were you thinking of me? Like, in the stuff that you do, was I thought
Yeah.
of? Right. So yeah,
Yeah.
she hates waking up to a cold house, so the heat's always on when she gets up. She likes coffee whenever she wakes up, so the tea kettle's hot. She likes to clean the house, right? Obviously, so I make sure the pillows are set and the
Yeah.
blankets are folded. Super simple stuff. And then asking her questions, and I sort of judge myself again on a scale of 1 to 5. How invested was I in our conversations? How intentional was I in those? So
Dude, Kyle, I'm laughing because the big point of contention, because like what you were mentioning earlier, like a friend of ours really sort of helped us because like she was talking about how a couples therapist had said like, hey, there's roommate stuff and then there's marriage stuff. Like, don't intermingle the two. Like, what's like the toilet seat up, things being left out, that's roommate stuff. It's not marriage stuff. And so my wife and I like really joke about that and have a good time with it because it's actually really helpful to be like, all right, so my wife hates fixing the bed. And so for me, it's like that was the first thing, like growing up in a house of five, four boys and a girl, that my dad was like, bed needs to be made the first thing you get up. Like, and so in my mind it's programmed. So like when I don't see it, it's like, hey, you were the last one out of bed. What the heck? And so like we joke about it. But going even further, which I think is really funny, is like going back to the love languages. Right. So I want to know like what's your love language and then what's hers?
man, so we did this test with friends not very
Okay.
long ago. Every male was physical touch. Every female, number one was oh
Quality time.
man, quality time. That was what it was. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Quality time. Right. And like you think, you hear physical touching and you think that it's sex or something like that. And that could
Yeah.
be one of them, but it's even like
Yeah.
hand holding or pat on the back or back rub, just some sort of affectionate touch that makes you think that they know that you're thinking of them basically. But I thought that was so funny that almost all the guys had physical touch as number one, almost all the women had quality time as number one, and last for the women was physical touch, right? So go figure that, man. It's just such a unique dynamic between people and relationships and men and women, and you got to figure out how to make it work.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because we actually took ours in front of friends as well, and it was actually all over the map. But the funny thing about it is like, so for my wife, it's physical touch and oh my gosh, the other one that I just mentioned, quality time, right? And so for me, it was words of affirmation and acts of service. And so for both of us, it's exact opposite. The lower
Yeah.
ones were the person's top, and so like we joke about that. And I think another funny thing here, Kyle, is like you're really making me look bad here. So obviously living in Arizona, it's hot all the time. And so our biggest like roommate like scuffle is always the temperature. because
Well, no.
because we're both trying to be comfortable. Like even like when we go to bed, like I have a fan blasting me and she's like, I am freezing. And I'm like, babe, there are some sweatshirts in the closet. Go and put one on.
No, and for clarification, it's not like I like it being that hot in here. She
Yeah.
does, right? And I'm just trying to show her that I'm thinking of her. So no, I hear you, man. And Idaho, you can get some pretty cold mornings, but I'd walk around with it being in the mid 60s. But again, like the whole goal is that's what makes her think of it. And for your listeners who aren't
Yeah.
familiar with the book, like the idea is you learn to. She just sent me a text that said I heard that. um,
Hi.
for for um for the listeners, like the whole idea is that you learn what your spouse's love language is, and you learn to do
Yeah,
it because that's what makes them feel valued. And if you're making them feel valued and they're making you feel valued, you
exactly.
pretty much don't get better than that. So, um,
Yeah,
tough to do, but worth doing if worth doing for sure.
yeah. It's funny. So, like, especially as 2020 is hit, it's been really cool, even just with this podcast, Kyle. This will be episode, I think, 33 or 34. I'm still trying to figure that out. Um, but for me, like, I sat on this idea for freaking 3 years before I just stopped overthinking it and just imperfect action. Right. That's, both of our coach at some point has said that. Right. So I'm so thankful. Shout out to you, Tony Stefan, if you ever hear this. Um, Imperfect action really means a lot. So I've been asking this question to a lot of the guests, and I've really enjoyed the answers. So, for you, like, what's the maybe one or two things that you learned about yourself over the past year in 2020 with all of the craziness?
Oh man, that's such a good question, and one that I don't know that I've thoroughly processed. 2020, 2020 for everyone was in some way, shape, or form super challenging. I
Hmm.
lost my dad in 2020,
Hmm.
in combination with everything else. So, my dad was basically diagnosed with a brain tumor in February. He died June 1st, 3 or 4 months later,
Hmm.
sort of suddenly. No one could go see him.
Yeah.
2020 really screwed me up, man.
Yeah.
And it took, I don't know if this actually answers the question, but maybe resilient, maybe that's the word I want to say. And again, I lean a lot on
Yeah.
my faith, so I don't credit myself for that. I credit a lot of the strength that I get from that time with God. But
Hmm.
I when that happened, I went downhill pretty quick. So he got diagnosed. I went to his funeral. I came back immediately. I had COVID. Had to quarantine from the family for a couple of weeks. I had a rough bout with COVID, and I just was not in a good place for several months. And then it was like one day this fall, later in the fall, I spent a lot of time during that time that I was low or whatever, thinking like, I just don't care. I don't even feel like
Hmm.
doing or care about doing the work to fix this. And
Yeah.
I went for a walk. We live not too far from a park. I try to walk a couple times a day. Shout out to the neat. Everybody get your steps in.
Yeah.
Um, so I went for a walk in the park, and man, I just sort of had this idea of like, I don't want to be this. This isn't, I do care. I do care.
Yeah.
So I just started doing the things that I think I already knew were, some stuff I didn't know, didn't realize, some stuff I did know, reached out to the people who are sort of in my circle and was like, look, I'm not doing well, need some help. And just slowly climbed out of that pit over a series of months. So I think that 2020 taught me, number one, the need to just be resilient, right? And to not give up. And that even whenever you're in a pit, like it seems like you'll be there forever, you won't. But you do have to make a very conscious choice to do the work to climb out of it. And the work is worth doing.
Yeah.
You when you're in a hole, man, when you're in a funk, you feel like you'll be there forever. And you feel
Yeah.
like there's no one else on the planet in a hole. It's just you. It's a lonely hole. But the
Yeah.
reality is that if you do the work, you'll be out, and it's just a temporary spot. But yeah, it was rough. Sure, it was rough for everyone, but being resilient and leaning on my close friends, leaning on my faith, etc.,
Hmm.
helped.
Man, first and foremost, Kyle, shout out to your pops, man. 100%.
Um,
Um,
appreciate that.
and I think on another end too, man, you and I just became best friends because anytime that I've been asked that question or I present the question and then answer it, my two things are always for me over the past year: resourceful and resilient. Um, because I'm gonna totally girl dad myself right now. The one of my favorite movies is actually the and I don't know why I can't think of the damn name right now. This is just dad brain right now. But Anna and Elsa, like, what the hell is the name? Come on, Kyle.
Frozen.
Frozen. Gosh dang it, freaking A. Frozen 2. I'm just like girl dadding right now. So like, there's a scene in there where she's like literally in like the depths of some like really bad situation, and she talks about it, and it really resonates with me too. And I tell my clients this all the time, where it's like, you know, when you're really in a lot of pain, like the next best step for you is going to be just taking that step, right? And so like what you
Mhm.
talked about there is reaching out who you needed to reach out to, talking more about it. I think is just so powerful, because in a lot of ways for all of us, we've encountered varying levels of trauma over this past year, right? And so and I think the more heavily connected we are to one another, and you know, I always talk about this study, like the Harvard study about happiness. You know, they found that the happiest people at the end of their lives, or towards the end of their lives, were the people that were most heavily connected to their most important relationships. And so for our listeners out there, I just want to make sure that um, we solidify and highlight what Kyle talked about there, is experiencing some hardship over this past year with a lot of us who have, um, you know, again, shout out to your pops, man, the loss of your father, is knowing that you're in a really dark place, and knowing that the only way out is just to take that step and to start reaching out to others that mean the most to you, man. So, dude, I appreciate you sharing, man. I'm sure that throughout that time is just really tough time, dude.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm too old at this point to care to try to act hard if I'm not. And yeah, I think that anyway, I won't go off on that tangent, but yeah, I appreciate that, Desi, about saying shout out to Dad. But yeah, it's tough, but worth it, man, worth it for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure maybe there's somebody that is listening who's sort of there now, and it seems kind of cliche because there's a lot of focus around mental health, and that's great. It seems like
Hmm.
everybody's saying, "Oh, hang in there." But genuinely, as someone who's been there, um, it does get better. But you do gotta do something, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like anything else, like training. It's like weight loss. It's like being an RD. It's like owning your own business.
Hmm.
Like you're not going to just start off here. You have to work to get up there, and um, it's the same way. It's the exact same
Yeah.
way. So
Yeah. You know, I find that I connect with a lot of the mindset woes that I encounter, not only just with a lot of my clients, but just friends and family members and people who reach out. Um, is just really connecting a lot of the journey that I'm going through just from a business perspective. Because for me, it's not going to be like numbers in my bank account necessarily, but it's gonna, for me, like the moment that I feel like I am winning are the small moments where, um, you know, I get to be with my daughter at the park and not having to worry about having to go back to work, or
yeah.
getting to be here with her. You know, she jokes. I don't think she's joking. She's actually really serious when she says this. When she's like, "Daddy, like I need a little bit of space. Like we spend a lot of time together." It's so she'll like go off on her own. I'm like sitting there like, what the hell just happened right now? But even then, like just being able to be present for that, I think in a lot of ways, like I find these small little wins, and in the end, like the thing that I really feel good about is knowing that when I do what I do, like I'm going to continually be lit up in the same way, Kyle, that you did. When you're talking about your wife, you're talking about your family, you're talking about the people that you serve, man. So, um, dude, I absolutely appreciate you hopping on with us. Uh, before I let you go, I got a couple questions for you. All right.
Fire, yeah.
Uh, First one, where can people find you? You had a dope ass newsletter too, so we need to make sure that we put that in the show notes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so everything is through so the name of it is Valley to Peak. Everything as far as the website, Instagram, all the social media is V with the number two P nutrition.com, Instagram, etc. So it's V2P Nutrition, Valley to Peak Nutrition. Yeah, there's loads of free stuff, on there from, if you're interested in trying to do some sort of a mountain-based event or just train or whatever, there's a lot of stuff on there. I'm more than happy. Obviously, I love talking with people. So if you got a question, I'd be happy to answer emails, jump on a phone call, even whatever. But I appreciate this, Desi. It's been so fun to hang out, and it's been awesome to be a guest on here and chat not only about nutrition. I've been fortunate to be a guest on a lot of podcasts. which is almost always on nutrition. Love talking about it, but I love talking about my family and
Yeah.
business and mindset and stuff like that too. So I appreciate you going into that.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And let's be real, like if we're just talking about just nutrition, it gets boring. I don't know about you, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. And
We're
and
saying all
and
this, we're saying all the same shit. Like
and even on the entrepreneurship side of things, like you said, you feel like you're winning whenever you do small wins. I was always under the
yeah.
assumption that when you own your own business that you just kind of work whenever you want, but you make a lot of money. This is way more work than a real job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Like I
it's
wish I could clock in and get my 40 hours. You kidding me right now?
yeah, but it's funner. It's so much funner. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, Kyle, last question for you. It's kind of a fun question I like to ask a lot of the guests that come on here, and then I'll let you go to your beautiful family. If you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
oh, hands down, my dad.
I was gonna say like that. We already painted that, right?
Yep, hands down, my dad. Yep, for sure.
I love it, man. What was your dad's
Good
name?
question. Well, his name was Kerry, but now I'm curious. Who was yours?
It always changes, man, because I'm super extroverted. So I think this past year has been really hard on me because it's like I just want to see people. I miss handshakes and hugs. Like that's just what I miss.
Yeah.
Um, damn, let's see. So the last time I got asked this question, I said Tupac because I just like want to pick his brain on what he thinks about this last year, with all the racial tension of everything.
I'd
Dang,
actually just like to be at the table. I don't even have to have the
I
meal, man. I would love
I
to hear
know,
that.
right? I know. Um, dang, dead or alive? Yeah, man.
Put you on
I
the spot.
I know, dude. I honestly, I think the next person that I would really love to have dinner with is Jordan, because I want to ask him more questions about the documentary.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
um, yeah, because like a couple of friends of mine the other day, we were talking like to us, like his teammates after he retired, like they were like his not employees, but they're like his coworkers. Like I just wonder how many of them he's still friends with, because you can't share that type of like time with someone and not be their friend. But he's a different breed. So I think
Hmm.
this week, Kyle, it would be Michael Jordan.
That's good enough. Both good answers.
Yeah, yeah. Put me on the spot, my own pod, dude. What the hell? All right, cool. All right, Kyle. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. For those listening right now, we'll make sure that we put all of Kyle's information in the show notes. If this pod resonated with you, please, please, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can catch this as well on YouTube and anywhere that you get your podcast. Anything that resonated with you or a question that you might have, shoot it in the comments. We like to make sure that we're collaborating with all of our listeners out there, and also creating quality content that you can resonate with. And I feel like in a lot of ways with what Kyle just talked about, from the span of helping elite level athletes, some of his non-negotiables, which damn, bro, I'm going to have to, that one engaging question each day that really inspired me. And then talking about family, man, just like I said, man, shout out to your pops. I know the man's super proud of you, bro. I appreciate you jumping on the pod.
My pleasure, Desi. Thanks for having me.
All right, bud.